And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show here on Newsmax TV. On this Friday, Americans awakened to the sad news that President Trump and First Lady Melania had been diagnosed with the China virus. The news came after confirmation that President Trump's close aide, Hope Hicks, had also been diagnosed with a highly contagious disease. Now, since the early morning hours, we have also learned that Ronna McDaniel, the RNC chairwoman, has tested positive. One silver lining is that VP Mike Pence and his wife, the Second Lady, are negative for the virus. Throughout this show, we will examine the many facets of this terrible news. I'll begin with one angle that I've not observed being discussed in many quarters. The communist China government had better find a God and pray. That is the focus of tonight's shortened preamble. As you all know, I have been critical of the repressive and inhuman communist government of China for the intentional spread of the virus that has led to the current pandemic. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what our intelligence officials and the president himself have stated on this issue, allow me to give a brief summary. Before November of last year, the Communist Party of China realized they had an outbreak of a virus that we would come to know as COVID-19. As they struggled to contain this virus, in December, China realized the virus could be spread from person to person, and it was highly contagious. As a result, Xi Jinping and his merry band of dictators shut down travel from Wuhan, China, the source of the outbreak, to the rest of China. Now, this was a necessary and understandable precaution to stop the spread of the disease. But while travel was stopped from Wuhan to the rest of China, Xi Jinping and his proletariat allowed an estimated 5 million people to fly out of Wuhan, infecting the rest of the world. The vaunted World Health Organization, under the control of a man who isn't even a medical doctor, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, set out to cover up China's deceitful and deadly act. We learned that Dr. Tedros was handpicked by China to run the WHO. As of tonight, there are 1,030,267 worldwide who have allegedly died from the China virus. Here in the United States, the reported number is 213,052. The world's economies sit in ruins, and even though the United States economy is faring far better than most, the toll of lost wealth and shattered lives is growing. That brings us back to the president and his family's diagnosis. I'm happy to report that even staunch rivals like Joe Biden have respectfully passed on their well wishes and hopes for a speedy recovery. But sadly, there are conspicuous high-profile voices who are displaying their typical lack of humanity in an effort to lash out in their hatred of President Trump. We will name those people during the course of the program. As for this American, I'll not forget this attack on the world, on my country, and now on my president from the most murderous regime in human history. I suggest that Xi Jinping and his merry band of totalitarians find some sort of God and start praying. They should follow their friend Joe Biden's example, hoping for a total and speedy recovery, because if this unnecessary pandemic takes the life of a United States president, I and millions of Americans will demand Communist China pay the steepest of prices. Now, let's get to the top story tonight. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, they test positive for the China virus. Dr. Sean Conley, the president's physician, releasing this statement, which reads in part, "The White House medical team and I will maintain a vigilant watch, and I appreciate the support provided by some of the country's greatest medical professionals and institutions. Rest assured, I expect the president to continue carrying out his duties without interruption while recovering, and I will keep you updated on the future developments with the First Family." As we mentioned off the top, Vice President Mike Pence and Second Lady Karen Pence both had negative tests for the China virus. Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, and the president's young son, Barron Trump, also have tested negative. In the cabinet, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo testing negative, as does Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, Judge Amy Coney Barrett, the Supreme Court nominee of the president, also testing negative. Former Vice President Joe Biden, his wife, tested negative this afternoon. That's good news. The former vice president releasing this tweet: "Jill and I send our thoughts to President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump for a swift recovery. We will continue to pray for the health and safety of the president. and his family. And reaction is pouring in from around the world. Leaders, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who had the China virus himself, tweeting, "My best wishes to President Trump and the First Lady. Hope they both have a speedy recovery from coronavirus." And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu writing, "Like millions of Israelis, Sarah and I are thinking of President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump and wish our friends a full and speedy recovery." India's leader, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, writing, "Wishing my friends at POTUS, at Real Donald Trump, and at FLOTUS a quick recovery and good health." Now, while some of the reaction from the president's political opponents was appropriate and respectful, not all could make that claim. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi took this opportunity to take a political swipe at the president and First Lady.
This is tragic. It's very sad. But it also is something that going into crowds, unmasked and all the rest, was sort of a brazen invitation for something like this to happen.
And fresh off the dumpster fire of a debate, Fox News Sunday's Chris Wallace, without any proof of how the president contracted the virus, blamed the lack of a mask for the president's diagnosis.
Actually, a safety person, a health person from the Cleveland Clinic came up to the first family when they were seated and offered them masks in case they didn't have them, and they were waved away. And people in the hall noticed that they weren't wearing masks and everybody else in the hall was wearing a mask. When the debate ended, Mrs. Trump came over, walked past me. She was not wearing a mask. Mrs. Biden walked past me to her husband, and she was wearing a mask. So there was a difference in the way the two families and their camps treated the health safety regulations inside the hall. If there's one lesson from today, it's that here's the President of the United States who lives in the biggest bubble that exists on the planet, and he got it through no fault of his own, and so the answer is wear the damn mask.
And the person that most reminds us all of a broken down school, no class. Joe Scarborough of Morning Brzezinski, cynically hoping that the president's positive test would delay the nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court.
We're talking about the campaign, but also, again, it's very important for everyone that has been exposed, especially when you're talking about the Supreme Court nominee, the President Trump Supreme Court nominee. Has she been exposed? Has Mitch McConnell been exposed? It sounds like they likely have, and if that's the case, that's something that obviously pushes any hearings back at least 2 weeks, at least 3 weeks.
Unbelievable.